What up, everybody? Zarek, Underdogs of Addiction. Today's video is about how do you deal with the relapse, whether it's alcohol or drugs or any other addiction. For me, my addictions primarily were alcohol and cocaine. So a lot of you guys know, some of you guys don't know, that I've been in recovery for 18 months now. I surrendered and went to treatment in September 14th of 2022. And that was after pretty much hitting an emotional rock bottom. You can listen to my story on other videos. But through my 18 months of recovery, it's not sobriety, because a lot of people can get sober. They call it like a dry drunk or whatever. I've had periods in my life that I was able to stay sober, but I wasn't recovering. So no matter how long I'm in recovery or if I relapse, I always start my recovery date as September 14th, 2022, because that's when I finally did something, like seriously did something and asked for help. With that said, relapse and lapse could be part of the process. In that time, I have had a few lapses. The first one was after 7 months, and it lasted for a few days. Then I went to a second treatment center and sober living out in Idaho, which was a great experience. And I stayed sober for, I believe, 4.5 months there. And then I came home and I relapsed again. And then I got sober. And that was, I'm not even say I got sober. I got back on track. And that was probably about 4 months ago. And I have an interesting interview with CG Kid that's going to be coming out on the channel, his channel. He's a YouTuber who is very popular for addiction education. He has like 400,000 subscribers. We've had a couple interviews on this channel that people are starting to watch, and we talked about it on his as well. But we really talked about how lapse and relapse can really be a blessing in disguise, because you learn something every time. And every time I've had a lapse in my sobriety, and I learned something very valuable. When I relapsed after doing 7 months of treatment in Portland, Oregon at an amazing treatment center, Treehouse Recovery, I relapsed, and I learned something very vital about that. And so I went back and had to go do some work, and the work that I did in Idaho was kind of the work I didn't do in Portland. And it was a lot more spiritual work and things of that nature. And then when I came back home and relapsed, it was like, everyone was telling me like, hey, you can't go back to your hometown of Olympia, Washington, because you're gonna fuck up. So of course, when I came back home, I was in my head and I was like, well, I'm back home, and everyone said if I come back home, I'm gonna drink, so that almost gave me an out to fuck around and drink. And so I did. But what I've learned is, ever since I've been in recovery, the few times that I've had a lapse, it's not the same, because once you're exposed and you understand like the nature of addiction and all this stuff, you see things for what they are. On some of those lapses, I had like a little bit of enjoyment, but I also went really deep in the science of how alcohol and cocaine affect your body. So I'm really aware of what I'm doing, and so like it kind of takes it away, because if you drink alcohol, it gives you a short burst of serotonin and a rush and spikes your blood sugar, but then after that first couple drinks, it goes down and you keep trying to chase it, and eventually just shuts off your prefrontal cortex, I believe Andrew Lieberman was saying. And so once you start to understand like kind of these things, it kind of takes the allure from drinking away. But the times that I've relapsed, I've had a lot of different triggers, and I've made it through a lot, but there was one trigger that I've learned on my last relapse that was very hard for me. And relapse, there's a cycle of relapse, and I learned about it at Treehouse. And there's noticeable behaviors. Once you start using a lot of maladaptive behaviors, say you're like binging on food, you're binging on Netflix, you're isolating from your friends, you're not showing up to work sometimes, you're just disassociating from your life. A lot of those are the hugest warning signs. And on my last relapse, I noticed, I disconnected from my positive social circles like that I had in treatment. I was isolating. I wasn't working. So that is huge, to have a job and like a tribe of people you work with. And I thought that like I had got so much sober time that like you get complacent and you think that like you got this on lock. And I've heard this from people who have 5, 10, 20 years. Sometimes they slip up and they relapse. And it usually, from what I've found, is it's because we start getting complacent and we stop doing the things that got us to where we were. And this is for any human being, whether you're an addict or not. If you're isolating, if you're using maladaptive behaviors, binging on food, binging on Netflix, binging on porn, not making strong social connections, not eating healthy, not working out, regardless if you use drugs or not, you're going to use some type of behavior, of addictive behavior, to cope. Most human beings are wired for some type of addiction. It's just bred into our society. There's just a small amount of addicts, 5 to 10%, where it destroys their life, and then there's a smaller percent of where it literally, people who have mental illness and addiction, where they literally can't even survive, like they can't take care of themselves at all. And so that's something I wanted to say is, if you're going through a relapse right now, just know that like, it's all about how you look at it. In the past, I used to judge myself and beat myself up, and that would make me just want to use more. These days, when they do come, they're very few and far between. And when they do, I just lean in with curiosity and I try to understand myself and why I did it. And the majority of the time, it's because I was isolating. It's always, when I relapse, it's always because I'm feeling alone. So I'm either abandoning myself or I'm not connecting with people enough to feel close. So what works for me is, I have a great team at my job. I work with at-risk youth, and I have a great team that we work with, and we're all like very social. So I have a new tribe there. I have a gym partner I work out with, so I got a tribe at the gym. I used to do MMA, and I might get back into that, but that was a great way to find tribes. Some of you guys that might be yoga or painting, you got to find tribes. You got to find places where you feel like you belong, because a lot of us who struggle in addiction struggle with a core loneliness. And when you're able to connect to others and feel like you belong, I swear, like, it helps a lot. Some people go to church, some people, whatever you believe in. I do go to church sometimes. I do believe in God and a higher power. I'm not a religious person by any means, but I do believe in certain things, and that helps me a lot socially, just to go to a positive place and be around people. And so, if you are in a relapse, you just got to kind of look and see what areas in your life that are contributing to it. Maybe you don't have a job. Maybe you're not eating well. Maybe your mental health is just in dismay and you need intervention. I've experienced all of these things, and the more I've chipped away and like fixed these little things, the better I've been in my recovery. This thing isn't a straight shot. Not everyone just goes, oh, I got sober one day and they don't use it ever again. For a lot of people, it takes a lot of attempts to maintain the recovery. And so forget about judgments and all that stuff and being ashamed. Just look at it as a learning experience, and move forward. And you got to understand, if you used alcohol or drugs today, it's because it's serving a purpose. So you got to ask yourself, you got to reverse engineer it. What was the reason I used this today? Okay, I was feeling alone, so I decided to go to the bar, because when I go to the bar, I'm able to socialize, and I drank 4 or 5 beers, 10 beers, whatever, and it made me feel connected. And it's cool. That's cool. For some people, they can do that, and that's what they like to do. For other people, like myself, it turns destructive, because then I start looking for cocaine and start doing all kinds of bad behaviors. And so I know for me that drinking alcohol is just something that I shouldn't do. And it always, for many years, it had been, since I was probably about 24, 25, mainly 20, I'd say 25, became my comfort. Is something I would go do when I was feeling alone, stressed. It was that one thing that took me away from everything I was dealing with. And I also have a genetic disposition, because alcoholism runs on both sides of my family. So I'm very aware and honest that with myself about that. One thing is, like, I went through treatment, I worked some of the steps, I went to meetings. That I'm doing now is, I always told myself, you know, like, if I relapse, I'm going to finally work the steps and get a sponsor. And, like, I like AA, but AA can be very dry and boring sometimes and monotonous. And I'm an ADHD person. I like different types of recovery. But there is a lot of value in AA. You just got to find good meetings and find the right sponsor. And that's something that I'm doing now, is actually working through the steps and just allowing myself to commit, because I was a firm believer in just doing different methods that I believed to just maintain sobriety. And I always told myself, okay, if you relapse again, like, let's go through the traditional path, because a lot of people, you know, like to throw AA and NA under the bus, and I've seen it do wonders for a lot of people. And so that's something I'm working on right now, is just actually thoroughly working the steps and working with my sponsor, because life is so much better on the other side of addiction. Like, I'm a lot more of my recovered self than I was of my wounded old self. Like, I would say it's like 70% to 30%. And each month and each year that goes by, I'm getting better and better. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to heal. If I slip up and fall again, I will get back on track. But the danger in relapse is, if you're out there drinking, if you're out there using drugs, I mean, you can die. You can get in a car wreck. You can overdose. And that fear really helps push me to do everything I can to stay sober, because I love life. And through the hard times and the good times, you know, I don't want to die from an overdose. And so many kids out there are just dying, you know, and it's just unfortunate. And that's just where I'm at, you know. So if you're going through a relapse right now, if you're watching this and you just relapsed on coke or fentanyl or meth or weed or porn, understand you are not alone. There's millions of people struggling just like you. Take it from me, someone who's been to multiple rehabs. It's not over. Get yourself up, pick yourself up. The best thing that I've learned to do when I've messed up is start doing positive things. Wake up early, clean your house, go for a walk, go to the gym, call some friends. Just start building that momentum back, because a lot of times after having a long-term sobriety and having a relapse, you could really just go down in the dumps and really get mad at yourself. But that's not going to do anything. That's just going to hurt you. Instead of judging yourself, just ask yourself why you relapsed and learn. And be social and ask for help, and just find a community around you that loves you. And most importantly, love yourself through whatever happens in your life. This is just life, and we're all here on this ride together. You're not alone. So thank you guys for watching. I'm going to keep putting out a bunch of content. I got a lot of great ideas, and I thank everyone for watching this, and I hope this video served you today, and have a blessed day.